Welcome to EPG Pathshala. This is Pramod Nair of the Department of English. Continuing our lessons in culture studies, today we will look at one of the key concepts that we use in culture studies, and that's the question of branding. We'll be looking at the mechanisms of branding, but primarily we'll be looking at the large cultural shift that branding has developed with advertising, with the emphasis on the logo and the trademark. We normally think of these as legal issues. Trademark is something people fight over. There are copyright issues involved with borrowing an icon, a symbol or a sign. But that's not what it is. See, branding evolved in the ancient world to distinguish cattle. This is an interesting take on when we say we like to wear brands. Brands were once worn by cattle. So if you want to think of the irony of our contemporary life, we are more or less like cattle. But that might not go down very well, but you can keep that in mind. You see, people with large herds of cattle needed to distinguish my cattle from yours. So I would brand my herd with a particular symbol. It would be burnt onto the skin and all the cattle would therefore be distinguishable. So the brand effectively was branding, as in to be burnt with a hot iron. It was a signature, a sign of possession. I own X or Y cow, for example, or sheep or whatever it may be. But the important thing to understand is the brand was used as a marker of property, but also as a marker of distinction. This is not my cow. This is your horse. So the use of brand was actually a linguistic or semiotic procedure whereby the language of ownership is translated into the language embedded, marked on the animal. So the sign is what mediates between you and your ownership of the particular creature, and it distinguishes your creature from somebody else's creature. So branding begins as a marker of property, possession, and it continues to be that way. In the late 20th century, with the rise of the post-industrial society and the age of mass production, how do you distinguish between 20 different varieties of cell phones, 200 varieties of shirts, 400 types of apparel of this sort or that sort? The brand is primarily signifying the distinction across this bunch of mass-produced products. That is, the brand is what helps you isolate one particular item manufactured by one particular company from similar items produced by other companies. Now, we use the example of cattle in the previous instance. What we need to understand is that in post-industrial societies, we are not talking about 200 sheep or 300 cows. We are talking about 300 million, 200 million. As the numbers go up, it becomes almost impossible to distinguish from one blue shirt to another. All blue shirts look the same. They are blue and they are shirts. But the point is that within the discourses of advertising, within the rhetoric of signage, the only way you can actually distinguish one blue shirt from another is to ask which company manufactured this shirt as opposed to that one. So the storekeeper would say, this was manufactured by X company and that was manufactured by Y company. And you would say, you know what, I don't like X company shirts. What we are actually talking about is brand distinction. The term used in management studies is brand distinction. That is, I say I prefer this brand over that brand. It's not as simple as saying we are taking one company apart and giving it special value. We will come to something larger in a bit. But what I'm trying to say here is, just as we were able to distinguish one cow from another cow, we are able to distinguish one shirt from another shirt, not because they are in themselves different, but because of the stamp they carry. The shirt is also branded. The logo, the trademark, the manufacturing company's symbol would be adequate. Now, I did mention that the branding of cattle was a sign of ownership. So in this case, when we talk about branding in the consumer world or in the post-industrial age, we are actually looking at the rise of distinguishable marks. that help us make the transition from mass produced things to the things I like or the things I prefer. The things that one company makes as opposed to things that another company makes. Branding as a marker of distinction is both corporate / questions of property, but also personal and individual. Brands are icons. Icons could be visual or oral. They could be about sounds, they could be about visual portraits, symbols, and so on and so forth. Each icon has a specific meaning. For me, I would say I would like this shirt of this particular brand is not about the brand itself or the brand alone. It is about the system of values I have come to associate with that particular brand, the kind of comfort, style, longevity of the shirt which I have associated with the brand. In other words, what we are looking at is a transference of value from the product to the brand that embodies that value. Shirts are shirts, you will say. Yes, shirts are shirts, like cell phones are cell phones. But what the brand does is to say, oh, but this is not like that one. We transfer the value from the product to the brand, to the sign, because now the weight of value is carried by the sign, not the product. All right? Let's take a simple example. Why is it that brands such as Levi's jeans will advertise since so and so? They give a little year, since 1850. Why would I be interested in jeans that come from 1850? Frankly, I was not born then. But the point being made is something else. If a brand has lasted from 1850 to the present, it has the weight of tradition. It has the support of consumers for the past 170 years. What we are looking at here is the value of a brand, not the product alone. Please understand this distinction I am making. The values we associate with the product are transferred to the brand, and then we come to trust the brand. Now, brand trust is what the manufacturer wants. It's what the brand manufacturer needs. What we are therefore looking at is a system of values, ideals associated to the brand over a period of time. Oh, if it has lasted 170 years, it must be good. That's not entirely true, isn't it? I mean, crime has also lasted since antiquity, but it's not something we are particularly fond of. So is murder. But then murder is not branded. We emphasize branding because we believe that these values that the brand embodies are in the material object, and when I go via the brand to the material object, I get those values for myself. Whether it's a shirt or a cell phone or a game or whatever it might be. An example of an event that is branded is the Olympic Games. What does the Olympic Games stand for? Higher, faster. It's about surpassing yourself. The Olympics become a brand for humanity itself. It's about the triumph of the human spirit. It's about endurance. Now, we all know none of us can run like Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt is not even human when he does that. But the brand Bolt stands for, there's a car manufacturer now that uses that as one of its product specifications. But the brand Bolt represents the ability to surpass the limitations of the human body. Right? It is a system of values that says endurance helps, success helps, but success is not automatic. In other words, what we are looking at is brands begin to support, anticipate, but most importantly construct a system of values that we have begun to believe in. Which is why there are legal battles over brands, because what is being circulated and consumed, bought and sold is not the product. It's the system of values that a company has owned, has circulated successfully for the past several generations. You cannot use the Levi's symbol anywhere else for any other product, because Levi sales would tell you, look, you're not just taking our jeans. You're taking an entire system of values that have been in place since 1850. The tradition of values of a particular kind of labor process, of the ethics of marketing, that's what you're taking away. In short, what we are looking at is, like our interest in the values of a product, we can get there only when we have been mediated via the brand. It's the brand that tells us, you know what, if you buy this product, you'll be associated with this system of values. So the brand is actually an essential component of the consumption of the product. In fact, you could say that you cannot consume a product until such time as you have first consumed the brand. Let's not take high-end products like cell phones or automobiles. Let's talk in simple terms of buying some tea. When you go to a supermarket or a large store, do you say, just give me tea? Or would you say, I want X or Y brand of tea? You obviously say you want X or Y brand of tea because that's what you prefer. Now, please understand, we are not talking in terms of just a system of manufacturing. We are talking in terms of what I like to drink in the morning, right? Or what you might prefer to have in the evening. Do all books have the same value for us? Clearly not. Would you recommend, would you read, would you circulate a book recommended by your illiterate neighbor, or would you recommend and read a book recommended by a teacher? You'd obviously go for the book the teacher has recommended, though your illiterate neighbor might have more sense than your teacher, which is usually the case. But the point here is, our association of values with the book is mediated by who has given us the idea of the book. The brand functions like that. It mediates. Now the thing is, people will say, oh, what's there? Tea is tea, a book is a book. No. We very clearly say, no, that's not acceptable. The quarrel over brands is the quarrel over which system of values reigns supreme. A consumer culture is not driven, and this is something very difficult for us to understand, it's not driven by our fascination for the products. It's our fascination for the stories associated with those products, by the values associated with the products. It's not the products themselves. We couldn't care less about the product, actually. It is, if I wear this shirt, what would I look like? It need not necessarily be a comfortable shirt. It need not necessarily be a wonderfully functional cell phone. When we think in terms of, say, cell phones, the preference for brands is determined by whether it's sturdy, whether its connectivity it's good, and all that, but also about how it looks. When you look at this, at how branding functions, it taps into our dire need for a system of values into which we can insert ourselves, ready-made, available, recognizable. The brand is therefore an icon of recognizability, not only of respectability. I want to qualify that a little bit. What do I mean by recognizability? A brand is your access to cultural citizenship. People who have similar tastes, people who do similar things, people who follow similar sporting events, movies, cultural processes, cultural products. Cultural citizenship is, do understand, not very distinctive from consumer citizenship, but it's founded on a shared system of values. Those values come to us because there are brands. Alright? So the perceived uniqueness of a brand, which we all desire so ardently, is what everybody else is also looking for. So the brand caters to our collective need for a uniqueness, a unique story, a unique system of values. Brands are actually stories. They tell us a story. What do we mean by stories? A story is not necessarily an invented piece of fiction. A story has a certain plot. Let me go back to the example I've given. Levi's, America's jeans manufacturer since. Why is there a since? What does it say? You see, the slogan, the tagline, and the logo together tell us a story. And that story is of longevity, popular taste, acceptance, worldwide circulation. They say the second most recognized symbol anywhere in the world is the McDonald's Golden Arch, after the Christian cross. It's a brand that does not require a footnote. Recognizability is the process through which all of us, over a period of time, come to identify with a system of signs, a brand or a logo, without necessarily explicating its ideologies. Recognizability at one point might be what people will call blind faith as well, because we accept it without questioning, which is perhaps true. The important thing to understand here is the stories brands tell are as much about the brand as about the persona that we adopt or we wish to adopt. So the brand and the product have a persona, so do we. Now the question is, do these match? If you look at the rhetoric of advertising, the word you is used more than any other word. This is for you. Actually they are referring to 10 million people, but each of us thinks that they are talking to the individual us. They never are. No company can last if it is targeting one individual buyer. But the point being made here is, it should appeal to you as an individual person. Oh, this is what I am and this is what appeals to me. So the brand tells a story that I find convincing. And I say to myself, unconsciously, you know what? This is the kind I have been looking for. This is the kind of thing I need. This is really helpful to me. This is said by several million people and the product gets sold. So the important thing to understand is our notion of functionality, our function of usability, our notions of lifestyle, health, looks become associated with the brand. What we are looking at here clearly, and please remember what I have said about cultural citizenship, is a transactional process. The object, the brand, you. Across this is the discourse of branding. The branding tells the story of the object being sold, but it tells the story in a way that the individual buyer says, that is exactly what I need. This is what I want. Once the brand brings these two together in its story, you buy the product. Now this might seem like manipulation, but that's exactly what it is. The desire to own a product is never innate, but the desire to have something that helps you is innate. Yeah, I need something I can use to do this work. Then you look at a whole range of things, and the brand that convinces you that it's the best printer or laptop or whatever it is, yes, that is exactly what I was looking for. Now the brand that tells you this story in the most convincing way is the brand you will buy. In other words, what we are looking at here is not only the system of creation of values, but the system whereby those values are what we think we possess. What do I mean by this? I already mentioned our notions of health and beauty and functionality and usability. It is the requirement of the brand that it proposes, it projects that the object is exactly matching your requirements. This means very simply that the brand says, we have all that you are looking for. Notice the amount of investment in a brand, which is precisely again why companies fight over brand names, over logos. What is lost if a brand or a symbol is lost is not just sales figures. What is lost is the entire system of values that you have put in place as manufacturer or advertiser or whatever it might be. The problem for mass production occurs primarily in the global economy because the factors of production have changed so drastically. You will know, if you have been looking at processes of globalization, that products are not manufactured in the same place any longer. Decentralized production means very simply that they are assembled at various places, brought together, and then the product is given to you. Now the question is, if the product is not manufactured in the headquarters, for instance, how do I become convinced that I should buy this? What the company does is to say, look, if we have put our brand on it, no matter where it is manufactured, it carries the same standard. And that's the operative word. What do we mean by this? Standard is a system through which, even when the product manufacturing process is decentralized, the same system of values is deemed to carry it through. So even if your Cuban cigar is not manufactured in Cuba, the company says, look, we manufacture Cuban cigars. Even if the cigars are manufactured in China, our process of quality control are the same, wherever it is, whether it's Cuba or China, which means very simply, you can trust it because a standard has been maintained. The question of standard is very simply the continuity of a brand, no matter how broken, dissipated, fragmented the process of production can be. It guarantees to you as a consumer that when you buy a brand, no matter where it comes from, the brand remains the same. You might note, for instance, that whether this branch of McDonald's is here or in New York City, or Pizza Hut here or in Moscow, the interiors are done in a certain way, the cutlery is the same, the mode of service is the same. What do we mean by this? This is what we refer to as standard. Branding means all franchisee units of this particular company will ensure that they are not changeable. I trust Pizza Hut for this, and no matter where I go, I can trust Pizza Hut to offer the same pizza and the same service. Standard is the consistency of the brand across the factors of production. I say, this is the kind of pizza I want. I trust it. Now, if I go to a place and I buy this pizza, but it doesn't look the same, taste the same, then I say to myself, you know what? Pizza Hut is not the same. But the only way to ensure brand trust is to make sure that the standard, the system of values associated with the brand remain unchanged. This is particularly the case with global economy and the fragmented modes of production. Our last specific study within brand is the use of brand and celebrities together. Brands obviously use celebrities to promote themselves and sell the product associated with the brand. But there is a caveat. The question to be asked is, does the brand add to the celebrity's value, or is it the other way around? I used the word transaction before. I would propose that the brand a celebrity endorses is deemed to participate in the value system of the celebrity, even as a celebrity becomes a part of the cultural citizenship promoted by the brand. In other words, it's a symbiotic relationship whereby the brand becomes a celebrity because of its association with a popular star, but the popular star also increases his or her market presence, recognizability, cultural legibility because the brand sells him or her as well. What we are therefore looking at in all this discussion about brands and celebrities and lifestyle and the question of desire and anticipation of value is an entire system of communications whereby there is a product, there is a consumer. Connecting these two is a process of communication which we call branding. To summarize, the brand is a story told about a product. It's a story told about a product to an individual and a cultural community collective. It's a story told about a product through a system of science to these people. But most importantly, it's a construction of a transactional relation whereby a system of values is transferred from the product to the consumer. It's deemed to fit into what the consumer believes he or she needs. Branding as a mark of distinction, therefore, is not only about economics. It's about what we believe a brand possesses. It's also, very importantly, what we believe we will possess if we own the product. In other words, to own a brand is to say, I fit into the brand's value systems because the product fits into mine. Thank you.